Okay, so in some of the other videos, we were taking a look at fossils, pictures of fossils, some actual fossils. And after I recorded those videos, I remembered I had a couple more fossils that I dug out, and I actually have a lot of fossils and crystals and all kinds of things scattered about the house. And I remembered I had a couple other interesting ones I wanted to show you. Here's a little magnifying glass, and some of these fossils are so small, I want to try to see if maybe we could get them to show up a little better with the magnifying glass. I'm not sure it'll work, but we'll see. Let's start with this one. This is a very small fossil, and if you were to go for a walk, you'd probably walk right by this and never notice it. I'm not even sure we really need the magnifying glass right there. But right here, we could see a fossil insect, and you can make out the body of the insect there. That's perhaps an antenna. A little hard to tell exactly the structure, but that's a fossil insect. Let's see if it shows up better with the magnifier over it. I'm not sure if that's going to be any better. Maybe a little bit. Some glare though, too. Anyway, fossil insect. What makes this fossil special is the fact that we have an insect fossilized in stone. Usually a creature like this would decay very, very quickly or be eaten by another animal. And remember, we can't have this exquisite fossil preservation, and I should say this is a very rare fossil. Having fossils of insects is very unusual. But these kind of fossilization processes can happen to soft-bodied animals if the animal, when it dies, gets buried rapidly, so there's no time for decomposition, and it gets buried in fine sediment. And we can see the sediment is very fine. This is probably a siltstone or a shale. Some kind of what we would call mudstone. I think this is from China, actually, if I remember right. But little insect here. Usually insects would decay very, very quickly, probably in a matter of days usually. But in this case, the insect died, was buried very quickly in fine sediment, and the decomposition process just didn't have time to happen. And also, by being buried rapidly, it prevents other animals from eating it. So rapid burial in fine sediment can lead to really exquisite preservation of organisms. Okay, we also talked about amber in one of the other videos, and here I have a little piece of amber here. Again, that hardened tree sap. And this one's going to be pretty tough to see, but inside of it is a small insect. And it's that little black object right there. And I'm not sure I can really get that to show up well enough where you could actually tell that it's an insect without me just telling you it's an insect. We'll put the magnifier over it. Maybe we could see it a little better. Some glare there. Let me play with the lighting a little bit. Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know if we could get that too clear. But that is an insect. To really show that it's an insect, one of the things that I have here is a photograph of that little dark object right there, taken through a microscope. So this is what's called a micro photograph. And when we look at it now, we can clearly see some wings, right? So here are the wings of the creature, the insect, whatever type it is. Not sure, maybe some kind of fly. But we can see clearly a wing here. And if we look close, we can see some legs over here, right? So some type of fly-like creature. Again, a little hard to see. It's just very, very tiny. This picture was taken through a microscope. But that's preservation of an organism in amber. Now, the next one that I wanted to show you, and this will be the last one for this video, is a very large fossil. This is from Pennsylvania, and let me get this under the camera here. Yeah, this is a large, there's a pen for size, a large a piece of shale with the impression of fossil ferns all over it. And here we could really see this carbon film preservation that we talked about in one of the other videos. And we could see the impression of various types of plants, various species of ferns. Okay, here's a different plant here going in this direction. So different types of plants and different types of ferns. This is from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has a lot of fern fossils like this. And remember, Pennsylvania is one of our biggest coal-producing states. A lot of carbon. Coal is formed from partially decayed plant material. Well, this isn't coal, but it was found near coal for that reason. And we could see more of these fossil ferns here. Okay. There's a leaf right there. Right. This is a large piece I have on a bookshelf. Just kind of forgot it was there. Okay, there's a leaf there. Okay. So anyway, large sample, but kind of interesting. Okay, so let's get back to the notes. And this will be, I think, a shorter video. Maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I have a tendency to ramble on. I want to do just the next few slides in the notes to get into why bother studying fossils anyway? What's the point? Now, I should also make a point here at this time. We've looked at a lot of fossils. You've seen a lot of pictures of fossils. Actual fossils, photographs of fossils. You're not expected to identify fossils for the regions. It won't be like the rocks and minerals. You are expected to be familiar with fossilization, how fossils form. You should be familiar with the fossils, but you won't have to know them to the point of identifying them. Okay? So sometimes people get a little worried about that. Anyway, there is, well, let's just move on. Interpreting fossils. That's really what this is all about. What do fossils tell us? What do fossils mean? What can we learn from them? We could collect fossils, and as you can see, I've been collecting fossils for a long time. And that's a fun hobby, but what can we really learn from fossils? Well, fossils indicate many things. They, of course, indicate that many different life forms, many different kinds of life forms have existed at different times. And that seems obvious to us. You guys and myself have grown up with the idea of dinosaurs. We've grown up with the idea of extinction. We've grown up knowing that there are creatures that don't exist anymore. But not that long ago, over 100 years ago, this was a very radical idea. People thought that, well, what we have now, the creatures that we have now, must be the creatures that have always existed. And it wasn't until the 1800s that people started thinking, well, wait a minute now, and started finding fossils of things like dinosaur bones and such, and had a hard time explaining, well, how could these bones be from something that exists today? So this is actually kind of a new idea in terms of human understanding. Here we have diagrams of many different creatures and so on. We've talked about the trilobite, and as we progress in this unit, we'll take a look at how life has changed throughout Earth history. And we'll start out with the most basic of life forms, and we'll work our way up to dinosaurs, of course, and then up to mammals, including ourselves. But anyway, one fossil that I just wanted to take a minute to talk about is this one right here. And I'm going to pause the video just for a second and spend a moment on that one. Okay, I just paused the video for a moment. I wanted to just show you a couple pictures of a very famous fossil called a Eurypterid, or sometimes it's called a sea scorpion. And actually, it's kind of funny, I just did a quick Google search, and some of these things are kind of silly, like this picture here. The Eurypterid's been extinct for millions of years, so there's no way that a person would be holding one. But if we take a look at a fossil like this is very typical for what we would see with a Eurypterid. Maybe we'll just go to Wikipedia. but a eurypterid is sometimes called a sea scorpion. It was a creature that crawled on the sea floor. It had paddle-like arms for swimming. Let's see if I can make that bigger. There we go. It had paddle-like arms for swimming through the water. It had an armored body, kind of like a lobster or a crab, and it had a stinger on its tail end. So the eurypterid was a creature that lived in the ocean. Its common name is a sea scorpion. They were, for the most part, pretty small, although some did maybe get, 5-6 inches across, something like that. And really why I brought them up is that they're the New York State fossil. And in fact, on your reference table, on the cover, is a drawing of this little guy right here. So this is our New York State fossil. Large numbers of eurypterids have been found in western New York. So again, the eurypterid is the New York State fossil. We'll spend time talking about dinosaurs and other creatures later on in this unit. When we look at the age of fossils, and we'll talk about how we could age a fossil or put a date attached to a fossil, and we arrange them by age order, well, we show how living things have changed over time. So we could see a sequence of evolution. How creatures have changed over time. Here we have a series of trilobites from different time periods, organized by time period. Time periods are something we'll talk about later on, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, and so on. But we're going from old to younger. And we can see how the trilobite has changed over time. The eyes have become more complex, antennae, and so on. Fossils indicate how Earth's surface has changed. For example, where we live, we can find fossil seashells very easily. It's not hard to find a fossil seashell. And, well, the fact that we can find a fossil seashell in New York and many other places indicates that, well, this was once ocean. We can find seashells on top of mountains because this area was once underwater. So fossils indicate how the surface has changed. Fossils give us an idea, and we talked about this a little bit when we did climate, to past climate. And that was something that we talked about back when we were studying climate. But for example, we can find coral in New York. Well, coral forms in warm ocean water, in shallow seas. And we find a lot of fossil coral in New York, which tells us not only was this area underwater, but it had to have been a warm, shallow sea at one time. Fossils also give us an idea about the appearance and activities of past life. They give us an idea about animal behavior. We can't study extinct animals directly, but by looking at the bone structure, we can have an idea of how the animal lived its life, what it ate, what its diet was like, how it hunted, was it a scavenger, all kinds of things about the animal's activities. Now, this brings us up to this idea of relative dating, so this is a good place to stop. And we'll do age dating next week. All right, so that's all for now. And the next video will be about a lab on fossils.